Hey ho, let's flow. Okay, sorry for that cheesy introduction, but it really is to give you an understanding of what you're going to get today. In fact, what you're going to get all the time when you come to this channel is tools that will get you into the flow state. An El Capitano tool is called breathing, and it's called specifically nasal breathing. I'm going to explain to you how to breathe when you're performing your task in flow, or in another way of looking at it, how to position yourself to be pulled into or merging into the task at hand, whatever that may be. You have the one focus, the one specific task, then you match your breathing according to that task, and I'll explain more in a minute. So, a few things that you need to understand. There's a lot of different breathing techniques out there just now, but what we need to build a relationship with is CO2. CO2 in our system is critical for proper absorption of oxygen. If our CO2 dips ever so slightly, as in right now it should be at 40 millimeters per mercury. If it dips below that rate, your body's not going to get the correct signals. It's also not going to be able to correctly absorb or utilize the oxygen that's probably in there. CO2 is kind of like the control mechanism for your breathing. It's the build-up inside of that CO2 that creates your system to take a breath. If it's too low, okay, your breathing will be disrupted. So any activities that promote over-breathing, hyperventilation, anything like this will have effects on your CO2, therefore will have effect on the way your body utilizes the oxygen that it has available. Now, over-breathing or hyperventilating, you'll probably see it in some of the breathing techniques out there where people are taking a massive breath in and out, mostly through the mouth. What we want to be doing here is removing that habit of breathing in and out through the mouth and only breathing in and out through the nose. I'm going to explain a bit more about that in a minute. But the other thing is that over-breathing is the #1 cause for this being disrupted. Now you might think I don't hyperventilate, but you might have insufficient breathing techniques which will result in over-breathing. For example, you might be breathing high up in your chest, and unbeknown to you, you're breathing a lot. And when you're breathing a lot, you are depleting this, or you're disrupting the CO2 in your system. Alright, so you might think I'm alright, I breathe okay. However, you might be breathing high up in your chest. If you're doing that, then this will be affected. What we want to be able to do is walk about breathing less, walk about with the idea of having round about 6 to 8 breaths per minute. To test if you're over breathing, set a stopwatch for 60 seconds, okay, or a minute, whichever your stopwatch does, and time how many breaths you take within that 1 minute. Now when you're doing that, try not to create any unnecessary stress or tension in your body. Just breathe normally and find out what you're breathing at. If you're breathing well above the 6 to 8 breaths a minute, then you have room for improvement. Then the chances are that you're maybe over breathing. Now, what we're explaining about the proper oxygen getting utilized is related to what's called the Bohr effect. That Bohr effect is really, think of it as the correct partnership between CO2 and oxygen. Okay, they're best of buds. They need to be working in sync. Okay, if this is dipped, you're not going to reabsorb the oxygen quite the same. When you're trying to get yourself into the flow state, okay, there's a certain awareness, a tuning to your nervous system. Your nervous system can be broken down into many parts, but for just now, I'm going to speak specifically about the autonomic nervous system and the sympathetic branch and the parasympathetic branch. When you're performing your task in flow, okay, there is a progressive balance between that sympathetic and parasympathetic branches of your nervous system. This is the tuning into the task at hand. So let's say you've got that one specific task that you're performing. Your breathing should be matched to this. Now, how does this relate to the breathing? The sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. When you breathe in, you create a sympathetic response in your nervous system, and when you breathe out, you create a parasympathetic response in your nervous system. This is the fine tuning that you want to be getting yourself into, okay? So paying attention to how you breathe will be key for this. Now, when you use nasal breathing gives you a sense of control over your system, which is critical for getting yourself put into flow. That control also kind of like unconsciously aligns this correctly. So that nasal breathing will minimize this and also this, okay? Which is exactly what we need to do, is we want to make sure that we have this nice coherence here, but also we have this nice coherence there. So nasal breathing is key. Now, the way that I have spoken about breathing before is you can think of it as 3 key ways of doing it, okay? You've got nose, 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 mouth, mouth, mouth. Mouth, mouth, if you were to put this at the rate of perceived exertion, okay, so 1 is very easy, 10 is difficult. Let's say that mouth, mouth is at a 10, and let's say between 8 and 10 is nose, mouth. What we want to be doing is working only in nose, nose, if you know what I mean. Okay, that nose, nose is going to allow you to get that tuning, and it's going to give you the precision and accuracy for getting your tuning here. Now, if we put this into the skill challenge ratio that we utilize a lot in flow, 10 would be very sympathetic, 1 would be too relaxed, 2 is parasympathetic. We want to be thinking that flow sits around about a 7. That would be your nose, nose, again, if you know what I mean. Or you can think of it 100%, you can think of it 0, and you can think of this as 70%. So 70% of your output, okay? Use that as a mechanism for tuning into flow and using your nose as a means of doing this. Now, if you catch yourself too high up, okay, and you catch yourself going from nose, mouth, then you know, okay, I'm more likely to be up around here. What I can do is begin to attune myself to nose, nose, and a great way of doing that is extend that exhale. When you extend the exhale, you're going to be tuning yourself back into this sweet spot here. Okay? Now, another thing that we speak about a lot inside the flow state, which will be very useful for you here, and I'm going to give you a deeper understanding of this here, the nitric oxide, okay? So nitric oxide is a vasodilator, and it coincides beautifully with nasal breathing, nasal nitric oxide. And a wee side note, your nose is designed for breathing, your mouth isn't. So keep your mouth shut. Okay, so this graph here, right? This is a graph that I use a lot to explain the cycles of flow. You have the struggle, you have the release, the flow state itself, and the recovery. Now, this nitric oxide relation to flow really kicks in when you overcome that struggle phase and you go into the release stage. That's almost like the door to get yourself into flow, this nitric oxide. And when you breathe through your nose, you create this space or opening or relaxation that not only affects your blood vessels by vasodilating, but also loosens you up or tunes you into the task at hand. So when you implement this breathing technique correctly, you're going to be able to tune yourself into flow. Now, a really important thing that you need to get inside, whenever you're speaking about this or sort of listening to this video, you're going to be stationary, you're going to be sitting down, and you're going to be listening to it, and probably you'll pay attention. I'm going to start trying to breathe in and out through my nose, which is great, it's what you want. But when you're performing your sport, when you're performing whatever skill it may be, there'll be a motion to it, there'll be movement to it. So you need to make sure that whatever resistance and pressure is coming to you, you match your breathing according to that resistance and pressure, keeping to the fundamentals of not over breathing. It's like less is more, and that that word there, less is more, those words there, really resonate strong with anybody that's wanting to access flow on a consistent basis. Breathe in and out through your nose, okay? And think less is more. But when that intensity of your task that you're performing gets stronger, you keep calm, cool, collective. You keep breathing in and out through your nose. Use that as your gears. If that pressure pushes you to breathe in and out through your nose and out through your mouth, then you know you're not regaining, you need to regain control of the state that you're in, and getting yourself into breathing in and out through your nose is that. Why? Because it's working with your nervous system. Why? It's because you're going to be breathing less, so that you're not going to be over breathing, you're going to be working with the natural nitric oxide. You're also going to make sure that you keep your CO2 levels at bay, so that you can take full advantage of the Bohr effect, so you can utilize all the oxygen that you have available for yourself. This is the way for you to tune into the flow state. And last tip is this: tape your mouth shut. Tape your mouth closed as often as you can, especially if you're performing your skill, especially if you're performing your sport, whatever it is, keep your mouth closed. And then all you need to do is allow yourself to adapt to the intensity that's coming at you. If you lose control of your breathing, pull it back in. Now keep in mind, when you're doing that, your output, your performance will maybe be affected for a period of time. It will be affected for a period of time, but the fruits that you will reap will be absolutely massive when you can continue with your mouth taped up, but get back to that intensity level that you had previously before you taped up your mouth. Then you will shut everybody's mouth by seeing how well that you're going to be performing. I mean, there's so much performance enhancing things that you can really utilize when it comes to the breathing aspect. But when you also know the accessibility that you have when you get yourself tuned into flow on a consistent basis, it's unbelievable. It's breathtaking. Breathtaking though, only through the nose. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that video. I'm sure you enjoyed that video. You must have enjoyed that video because it's got such a lot of detail. But in short, breathe in and out through your nose, breathe less, and you're going to be able to tune yourself in to your nervous system, tuning yourself in or priming yourself for flow. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in another video. Ciao for now.